Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is healed, whole, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on all of our social media outlets, definitely our YouTube page, on Spotify, on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere you pretty much can find us at Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. So make sure you guys are doing that, following us. Also, I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast, and it won't cost you anything, but you have to stay to the end of the episode in order to get that information, which I know you're going to stay anyway. So just hang out a bit. And we're going to jump right in. One of the things we started is our product of the week. As you know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and so we have products that you may purchase in order to support the podcast. And one of the things that we have is our Deal to Heal tees, which is on Shopify. So our product of the week is our shirt, our t-shirt that says, make sure I can get it. It says, recognize your progress in the process. Recognize your progress in the process tee. So we know that we all are on a journey, and we all have our own goals and accomplishments that we want to meet. And a lot of times we so focus on it that we don't realize how far we've come. And so it just as a reminder to recognize your progress that you've made in the process of getting to where you're trying to get to, even though you may not have reached your goal yet, but you're definitely farther than where you were before you started. So again, you can find that at on our website for our Deal to Heal tees. That's where that is. Deal to Heal tees on Shopify. So it's dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's to recognize your progress. Recognize your progress in the process. So guys, please check that out. All right. Also, our website is up, dealhealfulfill.org, dealhealfulfill.org. If you go there, you'll find more out about myself and our whole movement, everything that we have going on. And there's also information about the podcast. There's information about the webinars and things that we are associated with. Definitely forgivenessmission.com. We are a part of that. There are also links to go to ebooks by ejames.com, which is where our ebooks is at. There's also a link for the Deal to Heal teas. So if you just go to our website, dealhealfulfill.org, you'll be able to find out everything, a little about everything that we have going on, and definitely the links that we have to get you there. So we're going to jump right into our podcast today. Just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest. Miss Amber, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. First of all, let me say thank you for being here. You could have been doing anything else, but you took our time to be here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
No, thank you.
So, Amber, we're going to jump right in. And so, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and let them know who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Amber Myren, and I am a organizational coach, a full-time teacher as well, and I love to do podcasts and any other motivational type of work to really help anyone who's struggling with overcoming something, because I've had my personal experiences with that, and so I'm just kind of using what I've learned to hopefully help others.
Okay, okay. So, Amber, um, tell us a little bit, because I always say before we get to the person we are now, with the heart that we have to help others by our own experiences, that there wasn't an experience that we went through that changed us to make us say, okay, now that we've got through it, we want to be able to help someone else. So I always ask, what is that journey? What was that journey for Amber, that you were who you were, and then now you're going this transformation or this experience that changed you into who you are now. So who is Amber before we see the version of yourself that you are now?
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it, that the transformation happened. And I think what's especially important is during that transformation, I didn't think that I would come out on the other side. Right. And so for anyone who's listening and kind of feels like they're in that stuck position, just know like the other side is so beautiful. And that other side is where you're like, okay, I've learned the lesson. I learned it the hard way, but now I'm on the other side of it and I can help others. And so kind of the lowest point I got to was about 2 years ago. I started to develop symptoms where I couldn't breathe normal. Eventually, I basically became bedridden for about 3 months, and doctors couldn't really figure out what it was at first. But I lost everything, right? I wasn't able to go to my job. I completely isolated myself from everyone I knew because I was slowly like losing my mind at the fear of what is this illness? What does this illness mean to my life? And so I basically did everything wrong, right? I isolated myself. I didn't really seek help at first, and I kind of catastrophized everything. And so not only did was my health bad, but also my mental health was terrible because I was so scared of what this meant for me. And I'm a passionate teacher, and so not being able to go into the classroom because I was bedridden was horrible for me. Then luckily, I eventually got diagnosed. I have two chronic illnesses, and one is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and the other is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And so both of them cause like chronic pain, but also extreme lightheadedness, trouble with exercise or exertion in any way. And so I really just kind of felt like I had two choices. One was to give up, or one was to adjust my life to the illnesses. And luckily, with the help of other people, I was able to adjust my life. But definitely at first, it was I didn't accept the illnesses. I just felt like, okay, well, now my life is over. And that created just like the biggest hole I've ever been in my life.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about a little bit. You mentioned some of it about, when you're in this space and you're going through, your own mental health challenges at that time. I've definitely been vocal about my challenges on the podcast. with depression and things of that sort, or even having suicidal thoughts because of the depression that I was in and going through that transition period when I was at my lowest, before coming out on the other side. And so talk to us a little bit about, those battles of that you were having, with your mental health at that time, and what were some of the things that helped you to kind of pull out of that?
Yes, and I so appreciate your vulnerability as well for sharing that, because I think me hearing others share that only makes me feel better. And
Mhm.
to hear that other people can relate to my struggles of having anxiety, depression, or suicidal ideation just makes me feel like, okay, well, these people are successful, these people have beautiful lives. And so that had helped me as well when I was really down. Because at first, when I was really down, I just decided to not speak to anyone, to not reach out for help, and to isolate myself. And that created just more depression and more anxiety. And then at the same time, I had I wasn't diagnosed yet with my chronic illness. And so I was just like, okay, I'll probably die from this. I've been in bed. I can't get out. Every time I try to get out of bed, I feel like I'm going to pass out. I can barely walk a couple steps. And so, with those thoughts, I was lucky enough to have the support of my family who really intervened and got me more supports. And so, I guess something that I feel is really lucky is, yes, I had to dig myself out of that hole, but I also had to have help from other people. Like, I had to make the decision to accept help. Um, but ultimately, there were so many people who helped me through it, like just other doctors or therapists or psychiatrists. And then slowly, leaving that isolation and going back into those friendships made the change even greater.
Yeah, I think our community is definitely at a invaluable um, support system, especially getting through those times. And I always say that was one of the things that helped me the most, was I had a support system that pulled me along when I didn't have the strength to pull myself out. I definitely had people that loved me, supported me, that kind of like, all right, kicking or screaming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm dragging you up out of this hole,
Hmm.
and until we're able to say, okay, there is sunlight out here, and start to regain our strength to, kind of push forward on our own. So that's why I want to ask about that, because definitely our friends, our family, whatever that support system looks like, and definitely one of the reasons why I'm so vocal about, my experiences, because we all having them. We are
Yes.
having these experiences. We all are going through something, and sometimes we feel like we're the only ones, you know what I mean? And then we
Yeah.
sometimes we feel like there's no way out. And when we were feeling like that, the best thing we can do is to reach out to others, to let somebody know, because oftentimes on our own, we don't have the strength. We don't have the physical strength sometimes, or it might just be the mental strength to push forward. And I know those were the things that helped me to get out, was definitely the support system and those that love me enough to help me out at that time. But another thing I wanted you mentioned about being able to accept that you had these chronic illnesses, and how that what that meant for your life. Because at the moment, you're down, you're bedridden, and like you said, you're thinking like, all right, this is the end, but coming to that place of acceptance, you're able to be like, you know what, it's not the end. Yes, I do have this. What can I do to move forward with it? Because it ain't going nowhere, So since I have it,
Absolutely.
what can I do to get past it? So one of the things that I teach is the 3 A's when dealing with adversity, and it's acknowledgement, acceptance, accepting, and then ascending. Right.
Mm.
First, I acknowledge, okay, this is what it is. Like it or not, this is where I am. And then after you accept it, then after you acknowledge it, then you have to accept it. Okay, what does this mean now? What does this mean, for my life? What does it mean for this situation? What does it mean for my relationships? Whatever it affects, whatever it
Hmm.
touches, what does this mean now? And the last one is a sin. So now that I've taken out into consideration, what do I need to do to move forward? What do I need to do to ascend extend, exceed to the next part of my life or whatever the situation is. So as for you, going through that same process of being able to, okay, accept this is where I have this, illness. How do I move through it, and how do I ask for help if I need it? Like that whole process. What was that like for you? Just accepting it, and then what were some of the things that you did to put yourself in a better position to say, okay, let me reach out to who I need to reach out to, or whatever it is that I need to do to move forward.
Yeah, I love those three A's. And I think acceptance is definitely a journey. And I had to realize that acceptance would take me further than resistance. And so learning to accept, okay, your life is going to be different. I had to grieve the life that I thought I was going to have,
Mhm.
and I had to accept my new life, and I had to figure out ways how to make my new life, yeah, easier for me. And so for me specifically, it was things like, okay, which doctors do I need to go to? For how do I need to change my diet? You have to have like double the salt of a normal person. You
Mm.
have to have like double the water of a normal person. You should be eating every 2 hours to keep up your energy. And so just like simple things like that, where I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And also, you don't have a lot of energy. So you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to have all these meals to eat if I can't really cook? There's about 25% of people with POTS are unable to work. And so I also had to accept that I might become fully disabled and unable to work as a teacher. And that was something that was extremely hard to accept. And even today, as I teach full time, because of the steps I've taken with my health, and because I've accepted, my family making meals for me, or my friends helping me. I just moved to a new apartment. They're them helping me with the physical labor of it because I'm kind of unable to do that. Having all of that support has made it possible for me to continue to function in the things that I love, but also I know and accept that I can't do everything that I want to do, that I can
Mhm.
make adjustments to what I want based on the reality. So I'm not going to be able to go like hike Mount Everest, or, be able to be standing up as a teacher all day and walking around. I have to sit a lot as a teacher. And that's not what I would love to do. But again, just kind of slowly accepting those things and accepting the help, which was really hard because I definitely was like, oh, I have to, do everything by myself. I need to take care of myself. If I don't take care of myself, I'm a failure. And then I think, I had to change my mindset of like, who doesn't have other people help them,
Mhm.
and how dare I think that I should go through life alone, where I always emphasize to students that they should lean on their support systems and build a community. And so I kind of had to, find my own hypocrisies and deal with my own demons to fully accept. And I still have to accept each day, but I'm better than I was.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that acceptance part, like you said, that's a lot of the time the hardest one. And not just accepting the situation, but accepting help, right? And so I
Hmm.
know a lot of people that even in my own family, who has been through transitions of different things, whether it was complications from an illness, or a stroke, or whatever it is, and um, they're so uh, I don't know. I want to say upset, but that's not really the word I want to use. But I would just say upset at the fact that I can't do what I once did. You know what I mean? I can't take care of myself like I used to. And that acceptance part of it, even when physically you're you're not just fighting me, but you're fighting yourself because you're trying to make your body do something that is not no longer able to do. Some of my loved ones, couldn't walk the way that they used to walk, but instead of asking for help or using a walk or something like that, it's like, no, I'm going to walk, and it's like, then you fall. And it's like, look,
Hmm.
I understand, but we're here now, and so that acceptance part is very big, and definitely takes some getting used to, but definitely, with those support systems and those people that love you, and being able to see, hey, this is what you want, you want to have someone to pick you up when you fall, because there are going to be times when we fall, whether physically or mentally, financially, however you want to put it, that we all go through seasons where we need some help. And so definitely being able to say, you know what, I am no better than anybody else, or I am just as fragile as the next person, yet also just as strong as the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And we all need each other. And so definitely having that mindset to change to acceptance and be like, yeah, this is where I am. I need the help. Let me accept those who love me enough to come help, and assist me in the situation that I am. I really love that. I think that's important. And so even through the midst of that, there's a transition with that also. So now that you have accepted and you're getting the help, like you said, you can't uh do things as you used to do, even as a teacher. Like, yeah, I know I would love to be at the front of the class and instructing everybody, for a whole day, and being the focus of attention for my students. But there's times when I have to sit down, and so I have to, you've had to adjust even the way that you do your job,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that you love to do. And so I can definitely understand, like, even the thought of having not being able to do it no more, not being able to go to work, not being able to be with my students. And so just the relief of, okay, I can do it, but now I have to just make some adjustments, in order to make it feasible for me and still be effective for my students. So what was a little bit of or just some suggestions that you can give, through your own experience of making those adjustments to be able to say, you know what, it's going to be different, but it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? And we're going to be able
Absolutely.
to get to that next step.
Yeah, I think I definitely started out feeling like, okay, well, then I'm not good enough if I'm not doing it the way I used to do it. And what so many others have told me also is there's no one right
Mhm.
way to be a teacher, right? There's no one right way to lead your class. And so, if you had a teacher that asked you to come to this teacher's desk, are you really thinking less of them? Right. And I'm also open with my students. I'll be like, okay, I'm feeling pretty lightheaded. So I'm going to be at my desk. I want you guys to come show me what you're working on. Da da da. I'd love to see and talk with you. I'm just not going to be able to walk around constantly. And I talked with a friend of mine who works in education as well. And she goes, I know teachers who don't get up. I know teachers who, because of their health, they're more in their chair than they are standing up. And that doesn't make them less of a teacher. They're still a rock star of a teacher, right? They still influence those kids' lives and they're still able to do their job. And I think what was different about them is they accepted it, right? They had
Mhm.
already accepted it and I hadn't. And so once, I started to realize, okay, I can be a better teacher if I accept this, right? I'm a better teacher if I don't pretend I'm able to walk around the room and then, become so lightheaded I'm about to pass out. I'm a better teacher if I'm open communication with my students about my hardships, because it only leads to them feeling more comfortable to tell me about theirs, and for me to be able to connect them with counseling and etc. And so I think it's like my own stubbornness and my own ego that was really in the way,
Mhm.
of not being able to accept, okay, you just do it. You do it differently. You do it differently and you accept help because people want to help you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of another thing, that there are people who want to be there for you. We just have to learn to accept it. That's definitely a great point. To my listeners, I know you guys are getting some great value from this. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and other platforms. And not only, just don't keep it to yourself, share it with somebody else. Let others know that we're here. So Amber, I want to talk a little bit about, because you said, you told us you were a teacher. What grade level do you teach, and what subjects do you teach?
I am a high school teacher. I mostly teach ninth graders. I teach US history, the second half of US history. And about half of my sections are specifically for recent immigrant students who are learning
Mhm.
English. And so the
Okay.
class is adapted to their needs as well.
Okay, cool. So I know one of the things I always which is not a surprise. But I always tell my guests, when you fill out the guest request form, I go back and I look at some of the things that um, some of the things you have already done that's on social media. And one of the things I came across that you had did was an interview with Aaron Brown on Resilience in Action. Aaron, who I also was a guest on her show, great host, and you guys were having a conversation about uh, the changes in the educational system around the U.S. history and what may be considered the true history, because of course their history has been written in a way that is like, hey, this was a great thing, and we built this country, and look how great it is. Not really bringing to light the things that was done to create this country. To how it affected the immigrants, not the immigrants, but how it affected the indigenous people who are already here.
Mm-hmm.
How it affected the people that were brought here, how it affected the people that came, the immigrants that might have migrated here, how it even affected them. And a lot of times with history, is let me just show you the good parts. You know what I'm saying? And don't look at the backside of this. Just look at the outcome and not necessarily the things that was going forth in the midst of it. So just in your experience, what has been your experience as a teacher, definitely with high school students, first of all. So I know one of the things that I do as a speaker is I go to talk to high school students before they get out to the world, to talk to them about preparing for that
Mm-hmm.
world. So I know that's a whole experience within itself, just for the small time that I'm there. So you being there every day, blessings to you. And also one of the things that I always say, and I'm glad I just said that because I thought about it. I want to say thank you first of all, because I always tell teachers thank you for your service. And a lot of times we reserve that statement or that sentiment for our armed forces. But I definitely always like to say thank you for your service, because you're on the front line of a different war. You know what I mean? You're on the front lines of a war from within, because it's one thing to protect our country from its enemies on the outside, but we also sometimes have to protect ourselves from the enemies on the inside, which is our environments and things that we've taught, things that's being passed along with from us as as a nation, as a people, as citizens, and especially with our children and the access that they have to information nowadays. Some right information, some wrong.
Yep.
So with our teachers that's on the front line of that war, they're saying, hey, let me lead you the right way, despite all of these outside noises that you may be getting. And so I definitely like to say thank you for your service to all of my teachers, and definitely to you for the work that you do. But going back to that, just as your experience as a teacher of high school students, how has that been?
Oh, it's honestly the best job in the world. It really is, because these students are just like everyone else. They're curious and crazy and excited and going through their own personal stuff. They know correct information, they know incorrect information. They are really just, sometimes we say it's like society is shown through our high schools, and that it
Mhm.
feels like we can see everything that's going on just within those four walls of our classroom. And that's really what it's been, especially post COVID. Students have been dealing with a higher level of mental health issues, and I feel extremely lucky that students have felt comfortable with me and to share those things with me, and so that I could connect them to the right resources. It's also especially fun to be a history teacher, because I'm not just teaching history, I'm connecting everything to today. So if
Mhm.
we're talking about, the migration of, Mexican Americans during World War II, and then kind of after World War II, having those Mexican Americans be deported back to Mexico just because the US was like, nope, never mind, we don't want them to have jobs. And then comparing that today, like, who can immigrate to the US today? Who are we stopping from having jobs today? How do deportations work today? And so the kids are passionate about that. I mean, of course, there's certain kids who are a little bit more into whatever's on their phone, but most of my students really do want to understand, I think, the horrifics of the past and
Mhm.
how that's related to today and what can we do about it, right? They're really action oriented, which is, I mean, if you study most movements, they're often led by young people.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my kids is like, you guys are the people who can lead these movements. Don't think that you can't. And so they have lessons that I've designed where they can create some kind of protest or idea or policy that would create that change for them, because they don't believe America is perfect because they can see it in their own lives,
Mhm.
right? I
Mhm.
I teach in a really diverse school system. I grew up in the really diverse school system, and so there's only a small subset of Americans who can really say like, oh, well, I just never experienced this hardship or that hardship, and so luckily they are aware of it, and then I get to give them some context of like, where did this problem come from, right? Where is this, people ask me, I had a student ask me like, why are people racist? And I was like, great question, let's talk about that. And I was like, specifically in the United States, here's kind of how it began, and obviously there's no like just reason for this, there's no facts that back this up. And but then also putting it in a global context, because a lot of my students are from other countries, and understanding like America has huge faults, your country probably has huge faults,
Mhm.
and this class isn't to push patriotism, this class is to give you the truth that you need so that you can create progress in society instead of creating a dangerous like nationalist patriotism within the United States where we're not able to accept the flaws in our system and work to change them. And that's what's actually happening right now in Florida. There's a new advanced placement class, African American Studies or African American History. I'm not sure what is the name of it, but Florida has banned that from being taught. And so that's, you can see when people are not taught the real history and people are angry, and when racist people take power, they're just going to they take away that education because they know how powerful that education is. And so it really is dangerous when we think about what they're trying to take away from students' knowledge,
Mhm.
because that's just going to reinforce racism if they don't understand the
Right.
context of it.
Right, right, and I agree with you. I want to talk a little bit about your own personal experience because, like you said, you grew up, I guess, in a high school that was way more diverse, than probably some of these other areas. And I heard you say before, not necessarily just here, but the experience of what it was like for you in high school, and then to go to college, and it's like, oh, this is different. You know what I mean? And then even having some of those experiences in college around different people who may not have been exposed to as much diversity as you were, and maybe some conversations that had to come of that. So talk to us a little about your growing up in high school with diversity and how that transferred, over as you went out forward to college.
Yeah, I was extremely lucky. I went to high school in Gaithersburg, Maryland, which is often the most diverse city in the United States. And at that high school, it was about 10% white, 10% Asian. The rest split 50, or not 50-50, but 35-35, with Latinos and African Americans. And then, of course, we had students who were mixed race and students who were Native American as well. And so being able to grow up in a place where the groups that are treated like minorities in America were the majority in the school, I was able to learn so much from them, and have these beautiful relationships with so many people who had experienced racism or who really understood it at a level deeper than I ever would, that they were my friends. They were the people who were teaching me about life as I'm becoming, a teenager and as I'm going through my teenage years. And so because of their vulnerability and their ability to educate me, I felt like I had this gift of knowing more than a lot of other white people would. Like, especially if I compare it to like my family members who lived in less diverse areas. They might ask me questions about race because they're like, my whole school was white. I don't know anything about anyone from another race. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you're starting with me, because I think they say a lot, white allies should be the ones on the front lines of a lot of this educating other white people, because it's not fair to put that burden on people of color. And so I've really felt that in my own life, of feeling like, okay, well, if I want to be anti-racist, then this is what I have to do. I have to educate others about this, and I can't shy away from it. And so it's got more, it's always been pretty natural for me to converse about it. And so, but it's not always natural for other people, other white people who might be in my family, or who are like when I went to college, there were other white people who just assumed, oh, I would laugh at a racist joke too. Or I would also say like, something negative about a different group of people. And so calling them out on that in a way where I am being gentle with them, in the sense that I'm not using my anger to create more of a problem, but being harsh enough with what I'm saying that they have to think about it, right? So when I went to college, it was way more white than my high school was. And so when I made friends with many different white people, I realized that, okay, they say these things to me because they think I'll accept this. They say this racist joke because they think I'll be fine with it too. Or they talk smack about, people of color from their high school, and they think I'll be fine with that. I'm like, all my friends from high school are people of color. Like, how are you, that's not going to fly with me. And so being able to be someone to interject in their trajectory of racism and implicit bias and things like that, I felt very lucky to do. But also, I'm learning more and more ways to do it every day, because, in college, I would call out this, for example, like my next door neighbor who would say these racist things that she believed. And every single time I would just call her out on it. And obviously I also didn't really want to hang out with her much anymore. But at the same time, I knew, if I can say these things to her, can it make a difference? And the same thing with like extended family members who really don't have much experience with discussing racism at all, because their schools probably didn't teach it well. And so again, for me to be able to kind of give them history of it, but also like the current context of it, I think it is eye-opening to them. If it doesn't solve the issue, at least it pushes them a little bit forward, and then at least they know, like, I'm there for them. Like, I want them to change. I want them to stop having these implicit biases, and I will, take on the weight of their comments so that I can push against them.
Right. And I appreciate that. And like you said, I agree with you 100%. That is one thing to say, I'm not racist, right? But it's not just the fact that you're not, but are you correcting those who are? Are you giving a voice to, those who also may not be racist, but giving a voice to end racism and how it shows itself, in our society, whether it's, in our education, whether it's, on our day to day, is sometimes it takes more than just saying, oh, I'm not that. What are you? You know what I mean? And where do you stand on making a difference to change, what's been said? And so I definitely appreciate it, because we as a people, and not just saying myself as being African American, but we as a people in the United States need to be able to stand up for one another, to not just say, oh, I'm not that, but also not only am I not that, but I'm not going to stand by and allow you to just continue to be in that place as if there's nothing wrong with it. And I know even in my own personal experience, I'm definitely grateful for your vulnerability, because I remember having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and him telling me that him and his brother, who I worked with and was friends with, that they grew up in a racist household. And from their father and going back, it was like that's how we grew up. But him and his brother made a conscious decision that we're not going to continue to, perpetuate that kind of mindset, and so they just within themselves just say, okay, I'm going to be different. I'm going to reach out to people of different groups and different ethnicities that really build these bonds. And like I said, we're still friends today, because of that. And so, but it was someone taking a stand and not just saying, oh, that's not me, but also putting in the effort to try to change things, which is again why I definitely appreciate you and definitely appreciate you as a teacher and all teachers, because again you're at the forefront, or the front line of this war that we're in, of changing the mindsets of our nation. Yes, we do live in a great nation, we do, and I do believe that America is a great nation, but America's greatness was built on some horrible things that happened, and we can't not deny those things, because those things are still affecting us today. And if we deny it, then we're not only hiding our history, we're hiding the fact of who we can become as a nation. And the only way we're going to be able to become better is if we do better. But if we don't know what we're doing better from, how can we do better? We're like, oh, we're good. No, we're not as good as we think we are. So again, I definitely appreciate you, and the work that you do. One of the things that you, just to change things up a little bit, one of the things that you mentioned, was with you helping other people, and I believe you have a coaching program that kind of helps, from your experiences, to help others who may be going through some things, going back to just accepting the different things that it's in our life. So tell me a little bit about your coaching program.
Yes. So I am coaching anyone who has kind of feels like they're in a new place in their life, right? Normally, a lot of people, even students, I've worked with young people as well, just with COVID, that is like an adjustment, right? Having been outside of school and then to go back into school, these kids did not know what to do. I mean, I think it's similar for some adults who are going back into the
Mhm.
workplace after having maybe a better work life balance being at home, or having a worse work life balance, depending on what their job is, etc. But I think there's so many things that feel like they're huge changes, and how do we navigate these huge changes. And I really enjoy getting to kind of be an empathetic listener and hear these changes that are occurring in people's lives, and then also kind of giving them hope and giving them concrete steps of, okay, first you got to, like you said, acknowledge that this big change happened and we can't go backwards. We can only go
Mhm.
forwards. And then how do we accept that? And that acceptance is a journey. So you don't have to accept everything every minute of every day. Like, it can be a challenge and you can continue that. And then kind of how do you reorganize your life around that? And so, for me and my illnesses, it's okay, how do I need to wake up and take my vitamins. I need to do this. I need to do that. And so, what are those things that are going to keep me going? And then ultimately, why do I want to keep going? Right. And trying to help clients figure that out as well. Like, what is the meaning of my life? What do I feel like is the goals that I want to achieve? Why do I want to get up even though it's going to be hard? Right. Want this to why do I want to succeed even though I know it's going to be harder now because of this change? And I think I alluded to earlier too, is that sometimes when you go through your hardest moment, that's when you realize, oh, here's why I want to do what I want to do, or here's my why, or here's how I want to help other people. And so that's kind of how it worked for me, as I went through this tough hardship and I realized, okay, well, what can I offer to people? Okay, I can offer them advice on how to reorganize their life after catastrophe. And I think others can kind of do the same, of like, okay, now that this has happened, this some kind of grief or illness or life change or divorce or something like that. I've been there. I can tell you a little bit about it. And here's some steps that, we can work on together to concretely change your life. And I feel so lucky to get to work with my clients.
Yeah, and I think that's good. You mentioned a couple of things. One thing about it is it's all new, right? And even going through the pandemic myself, I am considered an essential worker. So I am into construction, and I'm in home health care. So both of those were still going,
Right.
so we still were going out. We still were dealing with clients. And there was some definite changes even in the workplace, especially on the home health care side. We had staff that were afraid because of the COVID, so they didn't want to come to work, and so those of us who were still willing to, be there for the people who we had to help, we end up doing more hours and things like that. So that was a change, and so we're going through these changes. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, there's a term that I learned in bereavement was dealing with your new normal. Like, what is the new normal? Because it's definitely not going to be the same anymore. COVID has
Mm-hmm.
definitely changed some things in our world. It's like, okay, so now we're here. What is this new normal? And being able to adjust to it and move forward. So I'm glad that you do that kind of work. Also, with your coaching, you have a ebook, right?
Yes, I have an ebook called Reign in the Chaos, Get Organized, Stay Organized. And it's more of a general organizational workbook that just deals with like, how do I work on my procrastination? But really from a holistic lens of, okay, well, maybe you're procrastinating because your mental health isn't great. How can we deal with that? Or maybe you're procrastinating because this isn't the job or the thing that you want to do, or what's getting in the way of you achieving your goals. And so it has concrete steps of like proven ways to work on staying organized and mapping out your day. But it also addresses how do you prioritize joy in your life as well, right? How do you not just say, oh, I'm going to tick off all these things on my boxes and I'm going to do well at my job and that's it? How do you say, okay, you know most recent happiness studies said that warm relationships are the number one indicator of having like a good and healthy life. And so how do I plan in time to see my friends and to cultivate relationships? And how do I plan in time to also take care of myself in whatever way that looks like? Maybe that means I have to cook for myself, or maybe that means I have to rest. And so I think it's especially useful for people with procrastination, but also people with perfectionism issues of, that I suffered with as well, of thinking you have to be doing something for your job 24/7 to be worthwhile. Whereas, like, no, how do you take care of yourself? How do
Mm.
rest is productive when you're taking care of yourself?
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. I think I need to get that for myself. I always tell people I'm a part-time procrastinator, right?
I like it.
Because there, it's like I go through phases. So yeah, I might get up one day and just like, all right, I'm on it, and the next day I just don't have the I have the mind to do it, but I
Mhm.
don't necessarily have the drive to do it. And I always say if I just have my assistant be like, hey, this is what we have to get done today, 1, 2, 3, then it's like, all right, that's all I need, just that little push. So it's
Yeah,
like
and
I'm part time.
there's no
Yeah,
shame in it. Like I have that in my book of like so many people procrastinate. There's so many different reasons why we procrastinate, and it's not like a failure of our own. It's just okay, here's some tactics you can use to help you on your
yeah.
worst days.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I like that. I'm gonna have to get my own copy of it. Amber, again, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. I want you to have the last words, right? So I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, however you feel to express it. Definitely leave us with your website and your social media handles. So we know how to find you and how to work with you. While you think on that, I want to my listeners, I told you guys that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. And you can do that by subscribing, by entering our super subscriber contest. So what does that mean? That means you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. And after you've done those three things, you text the word win, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. And that's all it takes. The contest is ongoing, so it never stops. So once you enter it, you're always enter to win it. And it's random, so there's no particular time. It might be today, might be tomorrow, whenever. I just pull a name and you win $100. It's just that simple. So again, you can win $100 from the podcast by by entering the Super Subscriber Contest. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Spotify podcast on Spotify. Text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100 in the Super Subscriber Contest. Amber, again, thank you so very much for taking out time to be here with me and my listeners. I definitely enjoyed it. I'm sure that the listeners enjoyed it also, because you added a lot of value to us today, and we definitely appreciate it. And that being said, I'll let you have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. This was a joy. You can reach me at Myren_education on Instagram. You can also find more information about coaching in the ebook on MyrenEducation.com. And my last advice for everyone listening is the same thing I've been talking about for a long time, which is acceptance. Accept your life, accept new ideas, accept that you don't know everything, and accept people who are different than you, and accept yourself and love yourself, because once you love yourself, everything becomes easier. And I learned that the hard way.
All right. That's great. We can't end it no better than that. To the listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. Thank you guys for listening. Until next week, be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.